This one's a no-brainer because history proves it, just things getting more dense.
Right.
Yeah, we know that's going to happen. Like I said, how is it going to happen? Probably admit like I would think more projects are going to happen in the single family areas where zoning is opened up. Even though
Hmm.
there's resistance, I still think the push is going to be there. The legislation is there. They're not going to give up on it just because some jurisdictions have posed resistance. So more creative, small scale, mid scale development and in pace with that, but maybe not to the same scale of development, larger mixed use multifamily.
Hello, everyone. Rick Albert here with another episode of The Key to the City of Angels. I'm here with Mark Nichols of MNichols Design. Mark, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Look forward to getting into it.
Yeah, so this is going to be a really cool conversation. We're going to talk about your role as more like in terms from an architectural standpoint. So, how did you get into the space? What exactly do you do? And then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. Oh man, careful what you ask. I'll start all the way back
Fair.
at the beginning at childhood about how I got into it. So, I mean, it's kind of cliche in that my parents saw me when I was a kid playing with blocks. And so they kind of, put the thought into my ear like, oh, maybe you'll be a builder. Maybe you'll be an architect. Yeah. And for whatever reason, that thought stuck with them. And
Hmm.
then they sort of presented the idea to me, which when you're a kid you have no idea what you want to do, but you're like, oh, okay, architect, that sounds fun. So in high school I took a drafting class, so I kind of get a sense of like the software that you use, what the daily practice of like designing and architecture is, and I liked it but wasn't necessarily 100% sold. So I went to a liberal arts college that didn't have an architecture degree or program, so not the wisest choice for a expedited path to architecture. But I did find, I think it was my junior year, I'd already declared a major, which was politics. I thought I was
Hmm.
going to go into law. That's like a typical pre law degree. And I was writing a politics paper. I think it was like 2 at night. And I was like, oh man, this is grueling. Like, it's not horrible writing this paper. I can do it. But I definitely wasn't enjoying it. And it was like,
Right.
this is just something to get through. Whereas I was also taking a studio design course, and my final for that was like the next week. And I was up like 2 nights in a row, really late. The second night, I think like 4 or 5 a.m. Didn't even really notice the time and was still enjoying myself and was completely into it. And I thought, to myself, I was like, maybe there's something to that. Maybe this is the right path, because when I'm actually doing this particular profession, or what would be the profession, I do seem to really enjoy it and time flies by. So I still graduated with my politics degree, took a summer course at University of Washington, Intro to Architecture. It's open to anyone. And I absolutely loved it. It gave you a good sort of background of the different classes you take in an architecture program. So like a studio course, maybe a spatial composition, if I remember correctly, and architectural and art history, I think were the three courses that were part of that, or three subjects that were part of that intro summer course. And I loved it, and I haven't looked back. And honestly, it's gone by really quickly. So that's how I got into it. I think architecture is a nice blend of artistic thinking, problem solving, systems thinking, organization. You deal with a lot of different people. So it's a really nice blend of different skill sets and different challenges. So for me, I found it really enjoyable.
That's one of the things I really enjoy about real estate in general is you do work both sides of the brain, like the analytical
Yeah.
side and the creative side,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like the art of the deal versus do the numbers work. So it
Yes.
kind of sounds like it's in the same boat.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every architect might have a different approach. There might be some that are more pragmatic, that are like, I got to get all the sort of functional aspects of the design. I want to start there, and then maybe can I make that beautiful? I more go like, okay, what's going to make a beautiful building? Okay, now how do I pull this off? Like, how do
Fair.
I work with a structural engineer
That's
to make sure
interesting.
it's viable? How do I get it through the city? But yeah, I mean, honestly, I've been doing it long enough now. They're both those thoughts or mindsets are kind of going at the same time. But yeah, it is. It definitely is. You're working both sides of the coin. Not only just when you're doing the design, but just in dealing with a client versus a general contractor versus someone, let's say, at the city of Los Angeles or any other jurisdiction where you have to get a building permit. So yeah, there's you definitely work both sides of your brain.
Yeah. So My understanding, and just I see this on like every episode. Like I'm a smartass now, I know it all. So if I say something that doesn't work, just let me know.
Sure.
Development generally is down, is my understanding. It's just the cost is getting so high,
Yes.
all of that. So as most of the projects you're working on for like individual owners on their own personal residence versus like, hey, I'm a developer as a profession.
Yeah. Good question. I'm a recovering smartass myself,
Like,
but
welcome to
no.
the club.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Bye, Mark.
Yeah, yeah, welcome to the club, I guess. You know, LA in particular is a difficult area for
Yeah.
developers from the few developer clients that I have, especially for sort of small to mid-level developments, just because the
Mm-hmm.
land cost is so high and there's
Right.
probably quite a few restrictions that you're not going to have the height that you need, or you have to go
Mm-hmm.
subterranean for parking, which City of LA has their new, or I guess it's come from state bills. City of LA has adopted them that have reduced parking requirements, which helps. But then it's a project in LA. Like in order for these developers to attract tenants, they kind of need to have parking. So it's like going subterranean's costly. The land is costly. There's sort of a minimum number of units you have to be able to achieve for it to even pencil or make sense. And
Sure.
that's what makes the small and mid-sized projects difficult. You'll still see a bigger mixed-use multifamily project go up, but that particular project, the developers probably bought 3 parcels. They've accrued the amount of land necessary to get the amount of units where now it starts to make profit. So that still is a constraint in LA. That hasn't gone away. The state's working on things they can do to make it more cost effective to build. So is City of LA. They're trying to allow developers to get more units, allow bonus incentives, but there's still more to be done. I mean, for instance, I think City of LA zoning is trying to transition away from this, but anytime you had like commercial or mixed use along a transit corridor,
Oh
but then
yeah.
residential right behind it, the
Mm-hmm.
commercial lots were limited in height, and it's like that's the key place where you could get 4 or 5 to 6 story mixed use apartment buildings. Lots of other cities have done it. They've done transit oriented development. That's the sweet spot for that scale of density.
Mm-hmm.
Culver City has succeeded in doing it. And it's so funny. You drive through Culver City and you see that type of mixed use multifamily. Then you get into LA along like Lincoln or Washington Boulevard, for instance, and it's still a lot of strip mall 2 story, 3 story. Now, that said, there are more mixed use multifamily going up in LA because they're starting to tackle that zoning. But there's just a lot of suburban DNA in City of LA's zoning
Mm-hmm.
that they're kind of slowly undoing. So I think, you know, the cost of land is always going to be high, and that's going to make development tough in this market. For any major city that's as developed as LA, that's definitely not going away. There's things that the state and the city can do, and they're working on it. So I do have some developer clients. It's small scale development, so duplex plus ADUs in the back. So
Okay.
some SB9 projects, a couple that just it's zoned to allow for duplex, and then you can do the ADUs as well. So those
Interesting.
are like 4 to 6 unit developments, and then the majority of my clients are single family homeowners. And with the Palisades fire and Eaton fire, there's 4 of my projects now are fire rebuilds.
Oh wow. Okay.
And the nice thing is that they are the original owners of that property that want to rebuild their home. And that one's interesting because right now it's single family homeowners, but my hunch is there will be, unless legislation gets passed, quite a bit of developers that are going in to redevelop those areas because they have the capital ready to purchase the land and to fully build on it. A lot of the slowdown I've seen isn't necessarily that City of LA isn't granting permits or they're taking too long. It's just people aren't getting enough from their insurance. They didn't have
Yeah.
enough coverage initially, and so they did get a payout, but then the gap between what insurance is paying them and to build even just the same exact size house, but to current building codes and a little more contemporary, they maybe have to come up with another $500,000, $600,000. A lot of people don't have that lying around, especially
Right.
if they're getting closer to retirement. So the real issue, in my opinion, is just funds available and how can these homeowners, whether it's through construction loans, financing, government programs to maybe government loans that
Mm-hmm.
would be low interest to make up that gap so that they can rebuild their house. That's been the biggest slowdown. City of LA is doing it, in my opinion. They're still a government entity. They're slow, but they're way faster than they've been on other projects. And there's a lot of permits that they're slowly, getting approved. But even if you were to take all the permits that are in the door right now and that have been approved, I think it's still a pretty small percentage of the number of homes that are lost, which means just most people haven't even submitted anything yet. So it really isn't a permitting issue. It's a funds issue. So I say all that because unless there's specific legislation that says like a developer or corporation can't come up and own land to try to develop it, then housing development companies, it's a great opportunity. They can get land at a decent cost in really high value areas and build quite a bit of housing. So I'm that's my kind of hunch, is that in the next 2 or 3 years, when homeowners decide, I think they're still deliberating, but eventually it's going to get to a point where most decide what they want to do with their property. So once that decision is made, you might see a fair amount of developer style projects going up in that area. So
yeah,
that was go ahead. Sorry.
No, go for it.
All I was going to say, that was a really long answer to your quick question. But
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, speaking of the fires, because part of the problem when I talk to people is like, look, these homeowners have never built anything. And now you're making them, like, it's not easy to build a house. Like, even just from the design perspective, right? As you know, so it's like, for some reason, like, they don't even know where to start. And then you're right, most are underinsured. This has been an issue for a long time. I met someone who was at Laguna Niguel in the OC, all those homes that burnt down. I met one of the owners years ago, and he's like, yeah, I was underinsured. No one told me to look at the cost of construction on my insurance policy. Right? And also, I think people have this mindset, like, it's not going to happen to me.
Absolutely.
Right. So one of the challenges I was thinking about actually with the fires, I'm glad you brought that up, is because building codes have changed so much over the years. Have you been hearing anything along the lines of like, well, I have a 5,000 square foot house that got burned down because of the building code changes? Technically, my design, like how much I can build based off the size of the lot, I can only build a 4,000 square foot house. Like, have you heard anything like that going on? It was just something that had popped in my head recently.
Maybe from a construction budget standpoint, they'd have to scale back to less than what was there previously. But if it was a true fire rebuild, City of Los Angeles and LA County have been great in terms of offering fire rebuild provisions. So same thing that LA County did for Woolsey Fire. You can rebuild what was there plus 10%. So it's based on footprint and height. So however, in this 5,000 square foot home example, let's just say for easy math, 2,500 was the ground floor, another 2,500 was the second floor. That 5,000 square foot footprint, that 2,500 square foot footprint, you could rebuild that plus a little bit more. So what's that? 2,750 square feet on the ground floor, and then add that for the second story. In addition to that, all they care about is the footprint. You could even put in a subterranean basement. They don't actually look at floor area for the fire rebuilds, which typically in zoning code, you would be limited on that. All they care about is the prior footprint, as long as you're not expanding it more than 10%, and the prior height, as long as you're not going 10% more than that. So in terms of what you're allowed under current quote unquote code, the fire rebuilds have an exemption. They're trying to incentivize people to rebuild. You can actually get quite a bit more. Now, so that's like zoning code, right? So code, there's lots of different codes. There's also building code. Building code has an energy code. Those have become more rigorous. So the seismic design, the standard that you're designing to, is more rigorous. So for your foundations are deeper, more rebar. So the building across the board, and I mean, the fact that if you built 15 years ago, the price of lumber was quite a bit lower. So building materials, whether it's through code or just through market forces, have gone up significantly. Energy code, you're going to be required to put solar panels on your roof. Usually for these homes, it doesn't end up being a lot of solar panels. It usually comes out to like a 3 or 4 kilowatt array, which honestly, if you're going to do it, you might as well at least go like an 8 kilowatt array or bigger. But that's another cost that you'd have to layer on. So if you were looking at the home that was there, if it was a 5,000 square foot home but built to a prior code, and you were tight on budget, you probably wouldn't be able to get 5,000 square feet again, purely just based on the funds you had available. So the easiest way to meet code that, all those additional costs due to code is just decrease the size of the house, and then you'll have enough funds to cover the building code issues that have brought the cost to construct the home up.
But it's not, on a practical basis, though, it's not really that much different, right? Because like the architectural fee's the same, the sewer line's the same. I guess
Yeah.
the roof line might be a hair smaller, but if you're building the same number of bathrooms and it's only one kitchen, so the plumbing's the same. So to build slightly smaller, you're what? Saving a little bit of lumber, a little bit of flooring? Like there's not that much in saving. You still need a window there, right?
Depends on how you're shaving off the square footage.
Right.
So if it was like hillside and a part of that 1,000 square feet was, the portion that was built into the hill, you're saving a substantial amount in foundation cost. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't just be square, but you'd have to, I say square footage because that's the easiest way to value engineer. You'd have to value engineer the whole thing. So maybe there's less windows, then maybe if you have large sliding glass doors, maybe you're limiting those. It's kind of everything's on the chopping block to make the house work. But the quickest thing and the quickest, I guess, item that you can turn to reduce costs is square footage. I mean, it's not just, it's every single material in that 1,000 square feet in every trade. So if you're like, we want to build an extra 100 square feet on the house, the cost difference isn't huge. But 1,000 square feet, that's a significant amount more footing. For instance, our foundation, if it's slab on grade, significant amount more slab. In 1,000 square feet, it could be quite a few windows and doors. Depends on how many bathrooms you have in that 1,000 square feet. You could shave off a good chunk of money. I mean, there is sort of an economy of scale to once you've gotten to 4,000 square feet of home, you have most of your bathroom, most of your utilities in place. Right. You've absorbed a lot of the cost per square foot. So you couldn't say like if it's a 5,000 square or 4,000 square foot home, you shave off 1,000 that you're saving 25%. It probably wouldn't be that much of a direct correlation like you're saying, but it might be like 10%. 10 to 15%.
Yeah, I have a client who lives up in the hills, not in those areas, but in a high fire zone. And I remember we were all talking and his wife's like, do we have enough coverage? And he's like, we do. But he's like, but to be fair, I also wouldn't do the landscaping right away. Or maybe it's like I build out the kitchen, but do very basic finishes. Like just get the house built and then we can always do upgrades later on.
Yeah.
To your point, that way you don't have to sacrifice square footage.
True.
Right? Like to your point, like it's all about the budget and how you make that work. So because you've been doing this for a minute, from like a design perspective, what are some of the things you've been noticing that not buyers necessarily, but just developers or even just homeowners, what are some things that they're looking for from an architectural standpoint that you've been noticing?
It's funny because I see on social media, they love to say like, oh, this trend is dead. Now it's this. One that I recently saw was, the open sort of floor plan or great room. That's dead. People like more or going back to more segmented spaces. And that's kind of been in for a little bit. But now I get clients that are saying, no, we want the open space. We want the great room. So I would say an open floor plan is still desired. Now, maybe they don't want one completely open, undifferentiated space. Maybe there's thoughtful little things that you can do to segment spaces that doesn't involve a full wall and a 3-foot wide door separating the two spaces. Maybe there's arched openings. Maybe there's change in ceiling, change of flooring, change of lighting, subtle differences to segment the space, but it's still the general idea is a more open floor plan, more of a great room for your living, dining, kitchen, and auxiliary spaces around that. So that one's still very popular, sought after. For fire rebuilds, a lot of clients want to know, how can we make the home more fire resistive? The insurance companies provide, there's this standard that they give that if you build a home according to that, they'll give you insurance or like better insurance coverage.
Yeah, I've heard it's minor.
I flipped through it, but it's like, it is, but it really kills good design. Essentially, they want a 5-foot gravel strip all around the perimeter of your house. So goodbye indoor-outdoor connection for Southern California living. Like I do landscape concept design, interior design, architectural design, all rolled into one. And you want all of those disciplines integrated and thoughtfully presented. You don't want your landscape designed to happen 20 feet away from your home, you're not going to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
Like essentially the insurance companies, that their standard they're putting forth leaves very little room for thoughtful landscape design, having it come up and be integrated and close to the home, really kind of cookie cutter suggestions, which the intent is in the right place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Limiting the amount of fuel close to the home, creating defensible space, having class A coverings or ignition resistant coverings. If you are going to do deck overhangs, not having flammable materials underneath, making sure whatever the deck is class A. If you're going to have the structure of the deck exposed, is that fire retardant treated lumber? Is it protected lumber? Are you going to close it off with another class A covering on the underside of the deck? So all of the theory there is good. How they propose to do it through design leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion, especially if you want to do a high-end home. So there's a lot of covering that with clients and saying, oh, okay, we'll use that as a starting point. How can we implement this and still get a really nice looking home for you? So, okay, if we're going to do plant species close to the home, we'll have them permanently irrigated on drip irrigation lines, so they're not really dried out. We'll do it sparingly. We'll make sure that where the plants are next to the home, there's not a lot of window openings. It's mostly like a stucco or another class A type of covering wall that's ignition resistant. And then getting into all the different systems we can use. Just under current code, a lot of these fire rebuilds, they're going to need residential fire sprinklers.
Right.
Just putting that in, honestly, goes a long ways, as long as you have them set up so that if you lose power, there's some sort of backup so that they kick on, which in the case of the fires, most of these homes lost power before the fire came through. And then additional sprinklers, so roof sprinklers at eaves, doing non-vented roof assemblies and doing slab on grade instead of crawl space style basements. So limiting the number of ways fire can get into the home. So a lot of older homes would have a vented roof. You don't necessarily need that per code. So you essentially have no openings at your eave or in your roof, at least for venting. You'll still have your plumbing stack and other penetrations, but limiting the ways in which fire or burning embers could get into your house. I mean, I'm pulling a typical architect. I'm going to just go through all the list. Right. No need to do that. Long story short, there's a lot of things that you can do that are either meeting current code or go above code to make your house more fire resistant, that don't involve building an all concrete house, for instance. You can still build wood frame, and there's layers of fire resistance you can build onto that depending on your budget, how far you want to go with it. So clients are interested in learning about that way more so than in the past. In the past, it was more finishes and what's a current design trend, or, integrating, creating great indoor outdoor spaces, incorporating the landscape into the back, making sure the backyard's really thoughtfully landscaped if it has a pool spa or just lawn area. So those were the typical concerns that came up. And then layered onto the top of that now is, how do we achieve a more fire resistant home?
So it's more like people are focusing more on the practical stuff.
Yes.
And I wonder, does Pinterest play a role? I can get my inspiration. I need to focus on the stuff that's harder to research.
Sure. I mean, now with AI, honestly, I do double check AI, but if I'm being completely honest, usually code research, I would dig into it.
Right.
Spend half an hour on it, really make sure I understood it, depending on what city, county I'm working in. Now I still do that, but I'll rely on AIs. And a lot of my clients have gotten savvy to that as well. So, but that said, they want to double check that against a professional. Any person, at least in the current state of AI, would know that you can start there. It helps kind of fill in the picture, points you in the direction of where to look, where to research, and then double check that with a licensed professional. And with Pinterest, same thing. A lot of clients are coming to me with a lot of concrete ideas for how they want their home or specific spaces within their home to look. And really they're coming to me just for those things, like you said, more sort of technical guidance, or how do we bring this all together? How do we synthesize everything? Clients are coming in with more research, more information, but the key task is still there of, okay, how do we pull this all off?
Right. So how do you, because I would imagine it's very difficult to set expectations for some of these clients? Like when they're so misaligned, how do you focus on getting them back on track or being like, hey, I understand you wanted A, but unfortunately that doesn't, you can't do it here because
Right.
of whatever
Right.
reason. Like, how do you navigate
Yep.
that?
Yeah, I mean, usually there are parameters that are hard parameters that most clients will understand. So maybe it's a budget thing, like, oh, I saw this Pinterest thing. I really want to do this. You say, oh, okay, let's look into that. Unfortunately, your budget is set to this. So if you really want to do that, do you want to pull from these other areas that you like? And
Mm.
usually they'll say no. And then, a good architect would say, okay, but what's in that Pinterest image or whatever they brought that they really like? Is there a way to execute something similar to it's more in line with their budget? So budget's a good parameter for helping them for help tempering expectation. Code and zoning restrictions is another one. Say, I know you really want to put your pool 1 foot off your fence for just if you want to be able to legally build this and get a permit, we're not going to be able to do that. There's also shoring considerations with the neighbor's property. You build too close to their property, you don't properly shore it. You cause differential settlement in their foundation. There could be a lawsuit. So there's those sort of parameters that most clients say, "Oh, okay, I don't want to deal with all that. All right, maybe we'll move the pool a little bit further away from the property line." And then a third one is just guiding them in terms of design. So design aesthetic. The most frequent one I get is there will be a lot of Pinterest imagery shared from a few different projects, and sometimes the styles will be clashing or styles that just don't belong together whatsoever. So if you were to try to implement everything that they sent, you'd end up with a platypus. So it's educating them and saying, "Oh, okay, like all these images are really beautiful. I like what you see here. If we're going to try to combine everything, it may not work. Can we go through each image and you tell me, what are you liking in this? What is it about this particular
Mm.
image that you're drawn to?" So maybe they have a bathroom that you'd see in a more traditional Spanish mission style home where the rest of the imagery is leaning more modern, and say, okay, well, it seems like the type of house you want is a more modern aesthetic, but there's something about this bathroom that you like. I don't think we can implement it quite literally like this, but maybe we can achieve something similar. So it's usually, if there's conflicting imagery, conflicting aesthetics, trying to understand what's the preferred aesthetic if they had to choose between the two. That most clients are going to lean that they have a preference that pushes them more one way or the other, establishing that. And then for the images that refer to the other aesthetic, what are the core elements of it that we can still execute in their preferred style or aesthetic? So those are the ways that I try to temper client expectations. I try to ground it in like actual parameters, constraints, so that it's not just it's my opinion or I'm the architect, I know best kind of thing, or it's
Yeah.
my subjective preference versus theirs. I try to keep it as objective as possible and try to put it through the lens of, okay, what are you trying to accomplish, client? This is your vision, your dream home. I'm going to help you try to execute the ideal version of that. And so as things are come up, the biggest parameter filter that I'm going to try to bring to it is, okay, this is helping us towards that vision. This is detracting. And that usually is successful.
Yeah, I would say one of my biggest pet peeves is you have, let's say, a Spanish style home, but then you step inside and it's like 100% contemporary modern.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
I Because you can clearly tell that they did just what they liked, not actually
Yep.
fit around the house. Like for example, our home is Spanish,
Yep.
so when you walk in, there's tile. So I mean, so what we did was we did the terracotta tile,
Yeah.
like, but we
Yeah.
made it look a little bit more modern, so it transitions into almost like a modern Spanish. But it's like,
Okay.
I'm not. But I was like, I've seen homes where they go totally off the rails,
Yep.
or to your point, a common complaint I hear from my clients when they're designing is like, well, I like this flooring and I like these cabinets, but they don't go together.
Yep.
I'm like, well,
Yes.
then buy two houses. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you have to kind of work with what you have. On the development side, what do you see as some missed opportunities that developers, are kind of missing the mark on?
I guess since we just were talking about aesthetics, I'll start there.
Yeah.
So similarly, I think they feel pressure. They want to create something that's trendy or reflects current market, but may not necessarily it may not all tie together from a design standpoint. So to take your
Sure.
cabinetry and flooring example, it does take, I think, an appreciation for design, or at least looking into it to know like there's a certain level of OCD that goes with it. If you're going to do a wood veneer cabinet, you better make sure if you have wood flooring, it's of a similar hue and tone.
That's what we did.
So if you have a light white oak veneer cabinets, but yet you want this like rustic flooring because you like farmhouse, contemporary farmhouse, and it's this dark flooring with tons of knots. Already you have a visual mismatch, and it's like you got to be a little more disciplined. Say, okay, which one is it? Like, do I want to go a little more clean contemporary with the white oak veneer finish, or do I want it to be like rustic farmhouse? And if that is the look, that's a very distinct look, and you have to carry it throughout. So I see developers do a little bit of like piecemeal, right? Oh, this is kind of a trendy floor. Let's put that here. Let's do this cabinet there. And it doesn't necessarily always come together. It looks new. So like, yeah, it looks like a new home. It looks kind of trendy, but it doesn't necessarily look thoughtful. It looks slapped together. Whereas if they were a little more disciplined in their design selections, I think they would create a home that looks more thoughtfully composed. And I don't know, this is all qualitative, so I can't scientifically prove it, but I would think that they could charge equal rents or sales prices if, equal to, if not higher than if they tried to do something that was a little more composed instead of just trying to pick whatever finish they thought was going to be trendy or look like a Pinterest image that they saw. I mean, the bigger thing that I think developers are, and half of it's just zoning code that they're missing out on, is like missing middle housing. So townhomes, row houses, some of it is certain jurisdictions just are resistive to it, especially city of LA. Like I said, it has this sort of suburban DNA that's really hard to get away from, but LA is a major metropolis. You compare it to other cities like San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, New York, that have far more row houses, townhouses, sort of three-story infill style home that works great. I mean, yeah, okay, it doesn't probably make sense in Calabasas, but in the heart of LA, it does make sense and should transition towards that. Yeah, there might be single family homes next to it, but I think that the amount of that suburban one-story single family house in LA needs to slowly get more in balance, back to balance with what the rest of the city density wants to be. I think I saw that like over 50% of LA is zoned R1 or similar, like single family residential. And a lot of that is relatively smaller size homes. So developers should try to use the different state bills that are out there to do a lot of middle missing density infill housing, because LA and a lot of Southern California definitely needs it. And hire an architect and do it thoughtfully. If you do it thoughtfully, you can create a pretty dense parcel that's still nice to live in, and it's great entry level homes. I mean, the idea that every homeowner is going to have a house with a quaint yard, front yard, and backyard, and it's going to be one story. It's nice, and there will be areas in LA where you can get it, but it shouldn't be the predominant housing type for the market. I mean, if you want that, go to the Midwest or go to other places in California. But a major, like if you went into New York with that expectation, people would think you're nuts. Same thing with San Francisco. Even Seattle, there's still little pockets of like one story and quaint 2-story single family homes around Seattle. But that's going to be less and less the case as these major cities become more dense. So developers need to identify that is a viable housing type, and they probably can, their cost per square foot construction can probably justify it. So more townhomes with ADUs, and getting creative on single family lots for how to create a housing type that I think is sorely missing in this area.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had people come through after we built the home and be like, oh, you developers, you're tearing down all these homes. I'm like, just so like we're clear, a lot of these homes that are being torn down aren't practical anymore.
Right.
They were 2-bedroom homes, or they were in such rough shape that it wasn't cost effective to try to make it work, right? Or people are like, oh, can't you just add a second story to an existing home? Like, and where are you going to put the stairs? And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, where are you going to put the stairs? I'm like, the foundation skipped leg day at the gym. You have to reinforce the foundation to support the second story. Like, there's things about it that just aren't practical.
Right.
And then, you brought up basically kind of the small lot ordinance, right? So I don't know if you've seen those. A developer I've worked with for many years just is in the process of selling one of theirs where it's like 12 homes on a lot.
Yeah.
And they're effectively detached townhouses. But you're
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Like there's a market for it
Yeah.
because they're not cheap. They're expensive, but they're quote unquote cheap for the area as far as new
Right.
construction is concerned.
Right.
Right. So it's a way to get into quote unquote affordable housing for that market.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
there is a way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it would be great if everyone could have a sort of standard suburban single family house as their first starter house. But there's a lot of people that have been paying rent forever and they're like, I don't want to pay rent anymore. I'd like to
Right.
have an asset. And to them, it doesn't have to be necessarily a dream home. It's more of a financial decision. We're like,
Right.
hey, we can get something that's a little more dense. It's going to be similar to the apartment unit that we have, but we actually own it. And
Right.
it's probably going to accrue value over time.
Sure.
This is, and if it works well, then they might be able to jump from that to another home. But with so much of the housing, I'm just focused on LA. California's, there's different issues in different areas, but so much of LA, a lot of the entry points are these, standard single family homes on lots with the front yard and backyard. And a lot of people are priced out of it. And
Yeah.
if they had another option to get into the real estate ownership market, it would help with the housing issue. It would, I think, fill sort of a dwindling middle class property ownership
Yeah.
crisis. And I mean, there's ways to do it. I think people, like you said, what you're picking up on is the sort of NIMBY or developers coming in and just tearing everything up. They're worried that they're just going to slap up a bunch of hastily construed 3-story rectangle boxes that
Yeah.
don't look good, shadow other houses, and kind of destroy the character of the neighborhood. And that's where architects come in. That's our value. A good architect should be able to implement a more dense infill type of housing on these lots, and it still match the neighborhood character, respectful to neighbors, and it's still a nice place to live. Albeit there's probably less yard space, but it's still well designed and thoughtful. I mean, I say this like it's some concept. It's been going on for 50 plus years, this type of development in other cities. There's so many case studies and they're not even case studies anymore. It's just a typical type of development that's out there that people know can look good and can be effective. So, developers, my words for them would be team up with architects. There's ever more opportunity for this with all the state bills and City of LA's adoption of them to seize on an area of the market that's underdeveloped.
Yeah, no, for sure. And to be fair, like I wouldn't be mad if the city imposed a citywide HPOZ, right?
Okay.
Historical Preservation Overlay Zone. Because, like,
Yeah.
to your point, there are some parts more on the west side where there's these big, like, contemporary boxes
Yeah.
that pop everywhere that don't conform with the neighborhood. And, like,
Okay.
the developer that I used to work with for a long time, they would actually build Spanish style. And the
Yeah.
neighbors would come in and be like, oh my God, I understand, like, sometimes you have to tear down the home, but at least you're building Spanish.
Yeah.
And so then I have to explain is like, yeah, but remember, the contemporary homes are the ones that are selling. They're selling faster and they're selling at a premium. So
Yeah.
if you want more of these Spanish style homes, you got to help me sell it.
Sure.
Because otherwise, if you're the developer who's in the business of making money, they're gonna make, well, I'm just gonna go build another box because it's cheaper too, right? Like just
Right.
for the walls and all that. So where do
Yeah.
you see development, whether it's sustainable development, any type of development, kind of going over the next like 10 to 15 years, like over the long run? What do you see? What do you think is going to happen? And I won't hold you to it.
Hard to say. I mean, California, I think, is going to stay progressive, and so as long as there's that lean, there's going to be. I mean, even if the leadership went more conservative, there's still the case for economic development and developers wanting to be able to develop more, which isn't necessarily partisan, and conservative leaning people are usually in support of that as well. But I think there's going to be more push for housing. So as we're trying to keep boosting the housing supply, more creative ways to develop all throughout California. So greater density in every urban area, in probably micro housing that goes along with that, sort of mini little. I mean, there used to be courtyard housing was a typical one, but maybe denser style and a little bit taller courtyard style developments.
Yeah.
from a so just broadly speaking, to cover my bases, because I don't want to get too specific because no one has a crystal ball. This one's a no-brainer because history proves it. Just things getting more dense.
Right.
Yeah, we know that's going to happen. Like I said, how is it going to happen? Probably admit like I would think more projects are going to happen in the single family areas where zoning is opened up. Even though there's resistance, I still think the push is going to be there. The legislation is there. They're not going to give up on it just because some jurisdictions have posed resistance. So more creative, small scale, mid scale development, and in pace with that, but maybe not to the same scale of development, larger mixed use multifamily. That'll still continue on the pace that it's on, but I think the small and mid scale will pick up. And then in terms of sustainable development or sustainable design, a lot of it in California code is already codified, it's already required. Not necessarily true sustainable design, but minimizing energy impact, trying to build higher performing buildings. I mean, it's so interesting to think, we have energy problems now. Maybe in 15 years, fusion energy becomes viable. Maybe solar panels, there's breakthroughs where those are far more efficient. And, a small array could supply the power needs for a home, right? So then we can go off grid. So it's hard to say. I do think we will get energy production systems will become more efficient to help with energy needs. So the idea of sustainable design being about performance, and you really see it expressed as a part of design. So like a home with solar panels completely covering the roof, I think that's going to go more into the background. So then it becomes more a question of, all right, well, what are the sustainable design strategies that just make the place more enjoyable to live? So, more efficient doors and windows in terms of their U value. So holding in conditioned air or heated air, allowing for homes to have more doors and windows, more natural lighting, more views out, stronger indoor outdoor connection, creating maybe microclimates with your house, incorporating landscape. So the elements of sustainable design that really make a space enjoyable and more of a healthy environment to live in, I think will come more to the forefront, because the other bigger items like more efficient HVAC, solar panels that are more efficient, I think those are going to make those advances and will be less of the focus, and it'll be more the experiential or qualities of sustainable design.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Guess.
Well, we'll find out. Right. And I think most of what you said makes sense. Like, to be fair, like, it's just the way we're going. If we have solar panels now, they're going to be trying to make it more efficient in the future and all of that. So, but Mark, this has been amazing. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, my preferred way is on my website or call me and bring me a project. And no, yeah, through my website would be great. You can also find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Instagram is at MNichols Design, which is my company name. And same thing, my website is mnicholsdesign.com. Feel free to take a look at my work. And yeah, if you like my design process and my approach of executing the ideal version of the client's vision, please reach out. Or if nothing else, as you can see, I'm clearly a chatty Cathy. If you just want to talk about design, development, whatever, I'm happy to talk.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for coming on the show. And then everyone watching or listening, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Want to keep unlocking the secrets to building real wealth in Los Angeles? Stick around for the next episode. Tap the video on screen to keep watching.